I am the House Co-Chair of the Transportation Committee. My name is William Strauss. I'm here with my co-chair, Senator Crichton from Lynn. We will call this hearing to order today. This was sent out publicly and online as well, notice for public hearings on a number of bills. We do conduct these in a hybrid format, which means that we have people watching and participating here at the State House and watching and participating remotely. I will do the best that I can in terms of managing those who want to participate by offering oral testimony today, at times alternating between those who may be remotely with us and those live. A couple of other things. The committee does hold open the record for the proceedings in terms of written testimony for an additional 10 days after today. For those who may hear or see something that jogs something or an additional point that they want to make, please feel free to submit additional testimony to the committee, either written the old-fashioned way or electronically. Either is acceptable and will be received by the committee in evaluating the substance of the bills before us. We also, I should point out, for those who are less familiar with the process, because of their schedule, do take legislators out of order who want to offer testimony on bills. It may be associated with other local witnesses that they have with them, but the legislators themselves are recognized out of order, as is the practice of this committee and many other committees. The other thing I wanted to do is introduce those members of the committee who are here before I turn it over for any remarks to my co-chair. In attendance here, we have the House Vice Chair of the committee, Representative Murray, two down from my left, and also committee member Representative Capano from Lynn. Joining us remotely, and just so you understand, I'm looking at a monitor on the other side of the room, and it reminds me something of an eye chart at times. You cannot fail. It's what you see. But I do believe that committee members, Rep. Sabadosa is participating remotely, as is Representative Cairns. As other committee members join us, I'll try and acknowledge, I will acknowledge them as well. Before I recognize our initial witnesses, I just wanted to turn it over to my co-chair for any remarks he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. I think you've covered it all. Just want to thank everyone for their attendance, and we look forward to hearing your testimony.
The other thing I would point out to witnesses is, and I believe it shows up on the screen as well, just so that everyone does have a chance to be heard, because we do have well, I'd say roughly 25 to 30 remote witnesses who've signed up ahead of time. We do ask that witnesses limit their testimony to 3 minutes, recognizing, as I said earlier, that if there's some additional point that you want to make, feel free to provide written testimony. I will say that the record already includes quite a lot of written statements, mostly on one bill, but regardless, we do have written testimony already that many people have elected to do. Nothing more to be said. I'll go first. I see in our front row in the room, Representative Steve Owens. Sure.
All right, Chair Strauss, Chair Crichton, members of the committee, thank you so much for taking us at a turn and for the opportunity to testify in favor of H 3392 and Senate 2217, an act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the commuter rail. As you remember, last session the legislature passed and sent to the then Governor Baker language that would have directed the MBTA to develop and implement short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans to electrify each line of the commuter rail system. We mandated that the MBTA not enter into any agreement to purchase diesel locomotives after the end of 2030. You'll then recall that the governor sent back that language, restricting the type of electric locomotives that could be purchased, a poison pill that was rightfully rejected. If the legislature's language had been signed into law, we would have had a short-term plan over a year ago, and we'd be anxiously anticipating the medium and long-term plans this month. So compare that to the situation with electric buses. Last session, we gave the MBTA a deadline of 2030 to stop purchasing diesel buses and a 2040 deadline for running all electric service, right? The T has now 3 electric bus garages in stages of design or construction, and their future plans all include electric conversions. Deadlines work. We know that we can't wait any longer to decarbonize our transportation system. So electric trains promote equity, and they are environmentally efficient. Residents of color in Massachusetts are exposed to concentrations of air pollution from transportation emissions that are 26 to 36% higher than what white residents are exposed to. This pollution triggers asthma attacks, worsens heart conditions, and has been linked to lung cancer in children. This bill tackles these disparities by ensuring that commuter rail lines serving environmental justice populations are the first lines to electrify. In my district, the commuter rail line, it cuts through a neighborhood with some of the densest, affordable, subsidized, and public housing in Cambridge, an EJ community with a high population of minorities, non-English speakers, and a median income well under half the state, something like 35%. These residents have a right to breathe clean air. Finally, rail electrification is a necessary step in turning the commuter rail into a regional rail network with headways that we expect from the rest of our transit system. If we want to reduce congestion, we need rail service that matches modern people's schedules so that they can choose to take the train. We know from the October numbers that were just released that if you offer people good service, they will take it, whether it's to Salem or as a substitute for the rapid transit lines that are under repair. So without this bill, we won't be able to meet our climate goals with diesel engines belching out fumes. Without this bill, residents of these EJ communities may continue to suffer with poor air quality for years. And without this bill, we won't get the mode shift to rail that we need to reduce our nearly worst in the nation congestion. So I respectfully ask the committee to report this or a similar measure out favorably. Thank you. And I'll pass it to my co-filer, Rep. Armini.
Good afternoon. I, too, appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of 3392, and I would like to express my gratitude to Rep. Owens for allowing me to co-file this bill with him, and to my state senator, Chairman Crichton, not just for filing the companion bill, S-2217, but for being the most impressive and tireless advocate for rail transportation in the Commonwealth. And while he has forgotten more than I will ever know about this issue, he and I, and our colleague from the Brickyard, Rep. Capano, came to understand its importance from the very same place, the great city of Lynn. As a candidate, I visited a school in Lynn that sits very close to the commuter rail tracks on the Newburyport-Rockport line. While talking to students, I was distracted by the diesel trains outside, the noise, but more disturbing, the dark gray exhaust belching from the engines and polluting the air. That exhaust contains soot and gases, sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide, all of which, as my colleague said, are linked to cancer, asthma, emphysema, chronic bronchitis, decreased lung functioning, and heart disease. More than 1 year later, I am here, urging this committee to once again adopt an aggressive timeframe for electrifying our state's commuter rail system, because these students and the rest of the community continue to ingest these fumes every single day. I urge you to give priority to the Newburyport-Rockport line and to Boston's Fairmount line, both environmental justice corridors. These communities bear the greatest burden of this pollution, and therefore they should be placed at the front of the line. I recently read a fitting quote. The difference between a dream and a goal is a deadline. We can talk about electrification, but without setting down in writing the when and the where, words won't likely be replaced with action. This bill gives the legislature the opportunity to express a much-needed sense of urgency. It gives us the chance to right historic wrongs and to clean the air currently endangering the health of the next generation. As my colleague from Watertown has discussed, there are many excellent and important, even urgent, climate and transportation reasons to electrify our transit system quickly. But it's the school children of Lynn and Boston and gateway cities around Massachusetts that I ask you to remember as you consider this bill. Thank you again for allowing me to testify, and thank you for taking me out of turn.
Thank you both. Obviously, you've learned saying nice things about the co-chair, never a bad idea. even within Lynn. Yeah.
Especially in Lynn.
Especially in Lynn. We specialize in Senate co-chairs from Lynn, actually.
It's wise.
Yes. I wanted to, just for those watching, I know some people who've watched these hearings have the sense that when legislators testify, no one asks them questions. And the only reason I'm going to direct a couple of questions for either of you is to just fill in some more details about the issue of the rail electrification. And so, first, Rep. Owens used the term short, mid, long term. I just, as I've heard the term over the years, I've always, thought it helpful to the public to indicate, what that means. Short to some is not short, and all the way through. So, if you could just kind of add the timing sequence that you think would comply with short, medium, and long, and then I just have a follow-up for either of you.
Sure. I mean, that language was from the transportation bond bill from last session, and I don't remember off the top of my head what that time frame was, but I believe there are, in the short term, lines that can be electrified fairly quickly. We know the Providence line is mostly electrified now. It's a matter of adding some stations on. So I would say 1 to 3 years, a 1 to 3 year plan, a 5 to 10 year plan, and then a plan out to 2040 when we're making them turn off the diesel locomotives would be reasonable to me.
Okay. No, and as I say, I just wanted numbers related to the concept. With regard to electrification, and for either one of you, I just also think it's important because it's not an easy issue in the sense that it's not for free, and it does put demands going forward over that time period on the capacity, the electric capacity within the system. So it's not a matter of extending an extension cord out and plugging in a train somewhere. Do you have a sense, and you may not, but again, I want the issues discussed together, of the capacity, the grid capacity that we'll need to see this thing through in terms of full electrification of the balance of the system that currently may run on diesel?
So you were right. It is, one, not for free, and it is, two, going to take a lot of electricity. I don't have a sense, and I believe there will be people speaking later on who may have more technical knowledge about how that's going to take. But I do know that our climate plan for 2050 is going to require a big investment, in our grid and modernizing our grid. So, those plans are baked in. We've already committed to zero out our carbon in our transportation system. So we've already made the commitment to build a grid that would support that.
And the only reason I ask is I think it's helpful for everyone to understand that this is a transportation issue, clearly, but also an environmental one. So getting the results is going to take a lot of work.
That's why we should start now, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't mean to just have him, if you wanted
No
to
worries,
jump
he's
in.
been at it longer than I have.
Okay. You came here smart with the background. Senator.
Well, first, just thank you to both reps for your advocacy, for your kind words on this. Obviously, it's taken a wide range of stakeholders to advance this at this point. Don't have a question, really, just wanted to remind folks that it was back in 2019 that the Fiscal Management Control Board first voted to include our line as well as Fairmont and Providence as part of Phase 1. And I like to think that votes have consequences and have results. But we really saw no action from the previous administration for years, and it's only been under this administration now that we're starting to see an investment in a game plan. And to your point, deadlines matter, and I think it's important to establish those as we continue to work for this. And to my co-chairs, some of the questions there, I think when you look at 400 miles of commuter rail, it's a daunting task in many different communities and issues that will have to be dealt with for electrification. But when you have Fairmont line as well as our line on the environmental justice corridor as part of Phase 1, we need to get started somewhere. I believe the capacity is there. With the existing grid, we just need more investment. But enough commentary from me from the chair, but I appreciate both of you and your continued efforts.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Representative LaBeouf, did you want to come up? Yeah. And before you start, I just want to note that the ranking minority member, Representative Howitt, has joined us remotely. Welcome, Representative. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chairman Strauss and Chairman Crichton, for taking me out of turn. I want to express my support for House 3366 and Senate S2285, which is an act electrifying regional transit authorities. The intent of this bill is to electrify all RTA fleets by the end of 2035 by setting phased-in requirements for new purchases to be of the electric vehicles and by establishing a central planning and procurement office within the Department of Transportation, tasked with technical, planning, grant writing, procurement, and worker retraining support. For the sake of a just transition, the bill also provides for free retraining options and hiring assistance for any worker who might become unemployed in the course of this implementation. The Pioneer Valley, Martha's Vineyard, and Worcester RTAs together have over 40 electric buses in operation, and other RTAs are likewise increasing the number of electric vehicles. Yet, in fiscal year 2023, 4 RTAs received $31.3 million in federal funding from the Low and No Emission Program to purchase 32 transit buses, of which only 7 of those were electric, with the remaining 25 diesel hybrids. This bill would set gradually increasing requirements that would see more RTAs take advantage of these kind of funding opportunities to focus purchases on zero-emission buses rather than legacy fossil fuel vehicles. Transportation obviously is the largest contributor to air and climate pollution in Massachusetts, and the 2025 and 2030 Clean Energy and Climate Plan requires the Commonwealth to reduce transportation emissions by 34% in the decade, identifying public fleet electrification as one of the key strategies to reach this goal. To reach this goal, the bill requires that RTAs, which serve 55% of the population here in Massachusetts, to operate all electric fleets by 2035 and to prioritize deployment of electric buses on routes serving environmental justice populations. The window of meaningful climate action is rapidly closing, and we can expand service and improve our RTAs while electrifying their fleets with cleaner, quieter buses. This will encourage more people to use transit, taking more cars off the road and out of traffic, and helping get us closer to reaching these climate goals. I've been proud to work on this bill and to commit the Commonwealth to a clear pathway and timeline for the electrification of our RTAs in close partnership with the Zero Emissions Vehicle Coalition, which is a broad alliance of over 40 environmental, transit, labor, community, and environmental justice groups. And I ask that you provide this bill and similar bills with a favorable report. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Hearing none. Thank
Yeah,
you.
great. Thank you
for
very
being
much.
here today. We also have with us Representative Elliott from Lowell. If you wanted to come up, welcome.
Good afternoon. Chairman Strauss, Chairman Creighton, Vice Chair Murray, Representative Capano, others, members. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you to speak on behalf of House Bill 3876, an act to limit the weight on motor vehicles along Ledge Road in North Chelmsford. As you mentioned, my name is Rodney Elliott. I represent the 16th Middlesex District, which includes Lowell, as well as North Chelmsford, which brings me before you today. Just by way of background, in 2016, after years of litigation with the town of Westford, permission was granted to Newport Aggregate to begin the construction of an asphalt plant. Among the many conditions included limiting the number of vehicles that could enter and exit the property onto State Road Route 40 to 400 per day. The count is monitored daily, reports are filed, and employees actually stationed on the property at the entrance daily. Vehicles are not allowed to turn on Route 40 to enter into Westford section of the state. As a result of this restriction, trucks have found access to exit through private property, which connects to a very small road in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, called Ledge Road. Between 175 to 200 vehicles enter and exit this undersized road each and every day. Also, since the asphalt plant opened, 2 quarries have increased production, one purchased by aggregates. Naturally, crushed stone and gravel is necessary to manufacture asphalt. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for years the Select Board and Town Manager have tried relentlessly to develop alternatives to redirect trucks that come from these Westford quarries and asphalt plant through Ledge Road. They use numerous streets in North Chelmsford as cut through to access Route 3, to bring their product to New Hampshire and other locations. Dust, noise has impacted this neighborhood. Quite frankly, I've seen it numerous occasions, and residents are at a loss. There has been little to no interest in Westford to reopen the permit process to increase the number of vehicles, trucks, and we're talking tractor trailer trucks, dump trucks, large commercial vehicles. These 2 vehicles, two trucks can barely pass on this small road. So the bill before you asks to restrict weight limit. There doesn't seem to be any alternative. Again, Westford fought the plant for years to prevent traffic from going through their town, which is understandable. However, this results in an exponentially increased number of business trucks going through Chelmsford. In April of this year, a home rule petition passed town meeting on 117 to 15 vote. So, honorable members, I come before you this afternoon on behalf of the residents to look favorably on H3876. Mr. Chairman, it's kind of at a last effort. Residents, we plead that you consider passing this bill favorably to impose weight limits to tractor trailers and dump trucks that these residents have had to bear for so many years. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you for bringing this to the legislature on behalf of the community that you represent. Are there any questions from members of the committee? If not, thank you again. I did want to note we've been joined live by committee member Senator Keenan from Quincy. And remotely, I see also Representative Norm Orr from Lakeville has joined us. Welcome. And now trying to, as I said at the beginning, balance this. I believe, and I'm trying to keep track of the order that I notice people. I see Senator Feeney. I will say I did indicate that your House colleague might or might not testify at the same time as you, but I wanted to be mindful, and if Senator Feeney, you wanted to address the committee now, it would be fine. It's your call on this.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Representative Barrows just...
Your mic may be muted.
Oh, you don't hear me? Can you hear me okay now? Okay? Go on, I'll come back on. Can you hear me okay now?
Now we can. I'm sorry. We may have missed your earlier comment.
No worries, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I believe Rep. Barrows was just stepping back on, so he should be testifying alongside me shortly. I appreciate the opportunity to join you and Chair Crichton. Continuing with our theme, I have so many nice things to say about the chair from Lynn, but in the interest of time, I will submit that in writing as well. Thank you both, the members of the committee that are on. As I said, I am joined by our colleague, State Representative Jay Barrows, as well as a panel of local officials from the town of Mansfield, including Town Manager Kevin Dumas and the Executive Director of the Tri-Town Chamber of Commerce, Kara Griffin, to testify in support, Mr. Chair, of S2235. This is an act to remediate and reopen the Visitor Information Center on I-95 in northern Bristol County for traveler safety and convenience and to promote regional tourism and economic development. This is a new bill, excuse me, chairs, that I filed this session with Rep. Barrows, aimed at upgrading and bringing back into service the rest area located in Mansfield, going northbound on I-95. If you've been in the area, you know, as you come up, there's a publicized rest area. There's plenty of signs indicating that it's there. It's the first rest area that a driver would encounter as they cross the Massachusetts border coming up from the south. And make no mistake, I was actually just visited there before the hearing today so that I could get kind of an accurate snapshot of how it looks today. The rest area itself is in a horrendous state. It's an embarrassment to us as legislators and to the Commonwealth. The building on site is boarded up, it's broken down. There are porta potties outside in place of bathrooms. There is litter all over the grounds, there's overground landscaping, there's construction debris. It is an eyesore. I get calls from people across our region and across the Commonwealth on this on a regular basis. This essentially, chairs, is our quote unquote welcome to Massachusetts for any travelers coming into the Commonwealth from the south. And I fully understand, you know, that we're not alone, and there are other rest areas that have been closed due to a lack of resources in the past, and I get that, but I think this one in this situation is a little bit unique. The building is closed because MassDOT just doesn't have the capacity to keep it open, clean, and safe, and there's no judgment there. I get that, you know, resources and capacity have been an issue in the past. We cannot enter into an agreement to privatize any of the facility due to a federal preemption, which I'm sure you are aware of, that dates back to the dawn of the federal highway system, right? So we can't privatize it. We can't bring in a fast food vendor. There's a federal preemption on that. We're working closely with Congressman Auchincloss's office, who has done yeoman's work in trying to work with us locally to find a solution for this. However, the current state of the property and the facility is just completely unacceptable, especially on the doorstep to our Commonwealth and to a region that hosts a golf course that's used for PGA events, a stadium that hosts an NFL and a Major League Soccer franchise, a concert venue in Mansfield for a top-tier musical acts, a casino and a horse track just up the road, and many other attractions for tourists and travelers alike that are coming into this region of the state. So we're trying to be creative here. You would ask, why are we doing a bill on a rest area? I have filed language in appropriation bills, in bond bills, as the Senate chair knows, and now standalone legislation, as this is a major priority for our region, and we are just trying to do everything we can to get this to happen. The Mansfield and the Greater Attleboro delegation are working together to jumpstart the rehabilitation of this site. This bill specifically directs MassDOT to conduct a necessary assessment of the building and grounds tell us how much it's going to cost. What would it be to rehabilitate this facility, to take the boards off the windows, to open it up and keep it safe and clean? What would it take to ultimately reopen the facility in partnership with others, which is what I'm excited about. Thinking outside the box, we can be creative here, as other rest areas have done in Massachusetts, to partner with other entities in the region, including possibly the local Chamber of Commerce in the town of Mansfield, to get it back into full service. So I appreciate the incredible amount of work that this committee does, and we'd be absolutely thrilled to partner with you in identifying a proper solution to this. And I'd love to, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, have you come visit, do a little field trip to this site, and I think you'll agree with us that we are absolutely better than this. With that being said, Mr. Chair, I will be submitting written testimony on a couple of other bills as well, and I just want to register my support for H3362 and S536, which is in regards to boater safety. So we will submit that testimony later this week, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I think we're trying to schedule a visit to Lynn first, but we'll get to the rest area. Just a joke. Are there any questions from members of the committee? If not, I'm not sure if Rep. Barros has signed on. If not, we'll come back to him in a bit.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman, if you can take a moment.
I would be happy to, Rep. Barros. We have a theme today. Do you have anything nice to say about my co-chair?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to see both of you this afternoon. And if either of you can free up this meeting, could you get down to Route 24 and Route 128? It's backed up to beat the band. It was only an hour and 45 minutes to get out. So, been a crazy day. This rest area, as Senator Feeney had alluded, we have a real great opportunity to showcase kind of the first stop on the hit parade coming in 95 northbound. One of the things that we have, I think, that could play to our advantage is Mansfield Electric is our own homegrown electrical municipal electric department, and they could build quite easily and very competitively electric charging stations there. And I know the federal government had freed up a bunch of money with their infrastructure plan that could help us at least make a start with that to, again, try to clean up the spot. It really is deplorable. I went by the other day, and like Senator Feeney, it's amazing what collects there. So we need to do a better job, and we ask for the committee's help to free this up and have MassDOT look at it and understand it, and so that we can better serve the commuters. We do have the World Cup coming to Gillette Stadium in a couple of years. There'll be a lot of folks coming up from the south that'll be heading right by, and it would really be nice if we could showcase that along with the rest of the Commonwealth in what we're doing. So appreciate your consideration and look forward to a favorable outcome with this, so we can roll our sleeves up and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again. I know we'll get testimony on this from some local officials, Chamber of Commerce as well, later in the hearing. Thank you again, Rep.
Thank you.
Attending live to testify, we have Senator Timilty.
Chair Strauss, Chair Crichton, members of the committee, thank you very much. Your outstanding staffs as well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to testify out of turn, and I think we'll probably have to have a citation for our co-chair, Senate co-chair, given the theme of the day.
Yes.
Might have to be the keys to the city even. But greatly appreciate the opportunity. Today I actually have 4 bills that are before the committee, of which I'm proud to be a member of. The first I would like to touch on is Senate Bill 2301, an act establishing speed limits on portions of a state highway known as Route 28/Randolph Ave in the town of Milton and Chickatobit Road in the town of Milton. This, in the past, was a home rule petition. Inexplicably, Governor Baker vetoed it on his last day in office without any explanation. It would simply, well, of course, this legislation is crucial to the safety of the people of Milton and all those in surrounding towns, and I would dare say in eastern Massachusetts. Thousands upon thousands of people traverse this roadway each and every day, trying to access the city of Boston on their way in the morning, or heading south on their way out of town. Given that Waze is now the way of the world, people use Milton in this road as a cut-through. I would venture to guess that our House Chair may even have cut through the town of Milton once or twice on his way to Route 24. And if so, he's always welcome. This intersection is also one of the most dangerous in New England. That is statistically proven, with a history of serious and fatal accidents. Simply put, Senate Bill 2301 will allow the town of Milton to establish a motor vehicle speed limit of 25 miles per hour for the approaches to the intersection of Route 28, a state highway, and Chickatobit Road, a Department of Conservation and Recreation road. According to a 2021 report by the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization, the highway itself is approximately 4 miles long in Milton. However, my legislation focuses on a particularly treacherous 1 mile strip of roadway that is a major artery utilized by 18,000 to 30,000 residents of the Commonwealth commuting to and from Boston each and every day. Specifically, Route 28 in Milton is a two-way, four-lane principal artery, which tragically experiences a disproportionate number of crashes each and every day. With this bill, there is an opportunity to act quickly. Moreover, this intersection of Chickatobit Road and Route 28 has experienced 62 motor vehicle accidents that were reported by MassDOT in the period from 2018 to 2020. Of those accidents, 4 of these crashes involved tragic fatalities. This intersection ranks first in the state's top 200 list, given the severity of accidents that occur at this location. In short, the safety of this corridor is of utmost importance, I know, to us all. Accordingly, I've been actively working to address this high crash corridor. To be precise, I've worked to secure legislative authorization and funding for Milton Police Patrols and traffic signalization in this area through several Massachusetts State Senate budget exercises. And I might add, when this was a home rule petition, it passed the Milton Town Meeting on a voice vote unanimously. The reason why it's now a standalone bill is simply because of the fact I do not want to wait around for another town meeting cycle. To be succinct, the urgency to prioritize the safety of motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists demands immediate action. Thus, it is imperative, I believe, that we take action and immediate steps to improve safety along this important high-volume, high-speed corridor. And I must say, the mistakes that I believe that MassDOT made were in the prior administration. New Secretary of Transportation has been incredibly responsive, I might add, and I am hopeful that things in terms on DOT's side, looking and heading in the right direction. But as I mentioned earlier, this was a home rule petition. It is a bill to lower speed limits, which simply to me is a common sense item that we can take action on. You know, legislatively, I appreciate the legislature has supported my requests in the budget for $20,000 each and every year for increased Milton police patrols on the Milton part of Route 28. Also in Randolph, another $20,000 each and every year, and that's something that we've done in the state Senate, that our House of Representatives, and I thank you to my House colleagues, have signed on to in the conference committees. So this is just another intermediate step, I believe, before a long-term fix. So with that, I thank the committee very much. I look forward to working with each and every one of my colleagues on this committee, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on this issue. And I thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and for offering the testimony on behalf of your communities. And I do know that intersection and the hazards that are posed there. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Senator, and welcome back to the committee.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
I greatly appreciate the time, and look forward to sitting on the other side of the panel with you.
As I indicated at the beginning, I'm trying to manage the list of those wishing to offer testimony, both live and in person. At this point, I did want to go to a person signed up, William, is it Gilliff or Gilliff? Gillette. Gillette, okay. Well, I'm going to blame it on your handwriting. How's that? All right. I apologize. Welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman Strauss, Chairman Creighton, honorable members of the committee. I'm here to speak on H3876. My name's Bill Gillette. I'm a North Chelmsford resident and town meeting representative. I've been asked to testify on behalf of multiple residents in North Chelmsford as their town meeting rep. Keeping in mind more than 90% of the town meeting reps voted in favor to get this bill in front of you. My own family has had 5 generations that have grown up in North Chelmsford. Roads are named after us. My great-grandfather had a quarry, so I speak to you with some history. Since we've lived there, myself, nor my family, nor our neighbors that we've known for a long time have experienced the disruption that we've seen from the ownership that has changed with the Newport Materials asphalt plant and the quarries that involve traffic flow in and out of a residential road, which is Ledge Road, that Representative Elliott spoke to you about. The residents understand there have been businesses operating as quarries for many years. However, these quarries were all small family-owned businesses when they began many years ago. What were once quarry materials going one way in pickup trucks and small dump trucks several times a day has turned into aggregate materials going both ways with 10-wheel dump trucks and 18-wheelers hundreds of times a day. I would ask for you to consider 3 things. 1, the significant impact to the quality of life and the property values in our community. Constant noise from J-breaks starting at 5 a.m., debris all over our streets, damaged roads, heavy-duty trucks required to be on people's lawns as the streets aren't wide enough. 2nd, significant safety concerns. Large trucks cannot fit on the residential roads. If you have a school bus in one of these trucks, one has to go on a lawn. Many have been stopped for speeding. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when there is a horrific accident and you have the opportunity to reduce this risk today. Finally, with little impact to the businesses that are operating there. Their businesses won't stop. They won't skip a beat. They have not only one, they have 2 other access points. This bill will merely shift the commercial truck traffic away from residential roads as it should be. In closing, I would like to thank Representative Elliott as well as Chelmsford's town manager Paul Cohen for bringing this bill forward. As with everything, change happens. We understand it. But having lived in this community for more than 50 years and knowing generations of these residents, they all want you to know no one ever anticipated a large corporation could ever operate under the same guidelines as a small family-owned businesses have operated for many years throughout our residential neighborhoods. I ask you to vote in favor of this bill, like our town meeting reps did, and to restore some normalcy to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillette, and appreciate the time you took to be here today with us. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday.
You too. I do see that another one of our legislative colleagues, Representative Lenatra, is here. I'd call the rep up now.
Good afternoon, chairs. Thank you for taking me out to turn. I appreciate it. Members of the committee, I am here to testify on an act relative to boater safety. It is now known as the Hansen-Malone Act. We are the only state in New England that does not have a boater safety course that is mandated to boaters. In the U.S., 74% of deaths occurred on boats where the operator had received no boater safety instruction. So here in what this bill does, it mandates everybody to take a boater safety test, and if they do not pass that test, then they're required to take a course. The course is online, it's very simple, but what this will do, it'll alleviate all the accidents that we're having on the water. My father was in the Navy, I grew up on a boat, I have boated as my family, and if any of you are boaters, you know what it's like out there. It's crazy. And during the pandemic, we've had so many people purchase boats because that was a safe thing to do with your family. You had some money, you went out with a boat with no training whatsoever. We require training to drive a car. Our car has brakes. We require no training to pilot a boat. So this was, you know, as I say in my family, safety first. So this is putting boater safety first before you actually pilot a boat. Any questions?
Thank you, Rep. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I know we have a number of other witnesses testifying later in the proceeding on this, in favor of it. Thank you for coming in,
Thank you
Rep.
so much for taking me out of turn.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Also, now returning on the sign-in list, and I will go back and forth for those who are watching remotely. Signing in is Valentine Pajar? Pager? Pager. I got it. I got that. Oh, I get it. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify before you on this particular bill. Yeah, a little background. My wife and I have lived in Chelmsford on Ledge Road for about 33 years now, so we're one of the newcomers. And we raised our 5 children there. Yes, we were crazy. And I'm here to speak in support of Bill 3876 from Representative Elliott. This bill is simply asking for the town of Chelmsford to have the opportunity to place some reasonable caps on the size and weight of the commercial trucks traversing this narrow residential road. As you've already heard, the road is extremely narrow. As something to consider in the size and scope, many of the trucks, not just one of them, they range up to 22 wheels, which is 6 axles. They're enormous. But one of those trucks would stretch from that wall to that post. Imagine that going in front of your house 300 times a day. Now I also sent in some written testimony, and I shared some video from my camera at the front of my house. But 300 times a day, those trucks go up and down our street. They're inevitably going to have to pass. And as you've already heard, when they do have to pass, they have to get off the road. So they drive, and I also sent in photographs. They drive across our lawns, and they create huge ditches. And some of the solutions have been to haul large boulders out to the front of our property to get the trucks to slow down. Essentially what the trucks do is they just drive over the boulders because they're a lot bigger than they are. So a couple of points just to add to this. The trucks do range from a reasonable 3 axles, which is what we're proposing, that be the maximum, up to the 22 wheels or 6 axles. The inbound trucks many of them are loaded, about 40% of them are loaded with heavy construction debris, refuse, huge pieces of concrete and asphalt that are being hauled into the quarries to be reprocessed. And then the outbound trucks are carrying that reprocessed aggregate, or they're carrying gravel, or sand and loam, those types of products from the quarry. The road, as I've already said, is too narrow. And the infrastructure is also collapsing. I mean, the road itself is broken up to the point where there's just huge potholes everywhere. And as you may have already heard, the drainage on the road is impossible. So what we're asking for your support in approval of House Bill number 3876 to allow the town to simply establish some reasonable controls on the size of these vehicles. And okay, I'm done.
Well, no, I mean, if you just, I don't want to.
And as was already stated, okay, these started, and we've lived there, these started as family-owned small quarries, which were fine. And we lived, and we've lived together, okay, but they have been sold in some cases and expanded dramatically in other cases. These are huge industrialized operations taking commercial construction level trucks through a small, quiet, residential neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Pager. Any questions from members of the committee? Rep. Murphy.
I do have one question. I probably should have asked it earlier. I know we got a number of emails on this issue.
Yes.
And I remember seeing the video, so I said, you
Okay.
sent the video,
Yes.
so, which was very, very helpful.
That was me trying to get out of my driveway.
Yes, yeah. So, MassDOT has a regulatory process for truck exclusions on roadways. Has the community pursued that relief?
Yes, I believe we have, but it hasn't been successful.
There wasn't an appropriate alternative route.
Okay.
I'm going to guess you'll be testifying, so we'll
Yes.
revisit that one. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, sir. Maybe we should get to that now. Are you Susan Olson? Okay, why don't we just make this efficient?
Thank you for taking the time today to listen to some testimony. I did send you an email. I'm not quite sure whether you've had a chance. Sorry, I'm very nervous.
Just
Take a look
relax.
at it.
Relax.
My husband and I have lived at 140 Groton Road. Our house is situated directly across from Swain Road. The access would be Route 3, Groton Road, left onto Swain, left onto Dunstable, left onto Ledge. So we get the trucks that are coming, either going into Lowell or traveling this kind of internal route that they use between the asphalt plant and the aggregate operation. We have lived in our home for 47 years. We've raised 4 children. Several years ago, when Mr. DeFelice approached the town of Westford to construct an asphalt plant, it was tied up in land court for years and years, until finally he won. The town of Westford entered into an agreement with Mr. DeFelice. They gave him the ability to restrict the exiting from the asphalt plant onto Groton Road, which is Route 40, directing the traffic into Chelmsford. The town of Chelmsford has, for at least 3 or 4 years now, attempted to get some communication going or some coordination with the town of Westford to help, because they haven't. The Board of Selectmen, their town engineer, no one is willing to sit. I don't know whether I should go even as far as saying the town of Chelmsford and the town of Westford have to get together and try to find a solution to this, because so far nothing has worked. The town of Chelmsford has tried to mitigate the issues with calming devices. We had to put a bus turnaround on Ledge Road because the school bus could not safely pick up the children that live on Ledge Road. So they got some private property that gave the town enough land to have a school bus turnaround. It's not safe. Living with this truck traffic is intolerable. We hear this, the slamming of the trucks, the jake braking. I have a video of one that came down at 4:30 in the morning. So this goes on all the time. Just finally, personally, my next door neighbor is my daughter. She has a 16-year-old autistic child. Brandon only wanted to jump on his trampoline every day when he got home from school. The trampoline is between our homes. He has a swing set, and he also has a basketball hoop. Brandon has several other issues. His greatest pleasure was jumping on his trampoline. He hasn't jumped on his trampoline in almost a year because he has to cover his ears because of the noise of the trucks. Anything you could do to help would be greatly appreciated. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Olson. I know this couldn't have been easy for you. I don't know if the Vice Chair, if you wanted to follow up with that question. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. If I could get a little bit more information on the truck exclusion process. So, as I understand it, and I'm trying to piece together the situation, was it one community excluded the truck traffic on the road, which then forced it to Ledge Road?
No.
No?
A couple of years ago, one of the options was to look into the truck exclusion on Swain Road. Groton Road and then to Swain. It was to exclude the trucks from Swain Road, thereby not allowing them to get really not near Ledge Road, but to try to direct the traffic in another direction. Mass DOT said no. They came in, they explored it, we did traffic studies, and they said no, because the alternative route, there are a couple of them. One was to go through a very busy square, it's called Vinyl Square. The trucks wouldn't be able to take a left onto another road, and there was no viable option to redirect the traffic.
Okay, so the problem, I guess, has arisen with the expansion of the gravel pits?
Greatly.
So prior, when the gravel pits were smaller, vehicles were still coming on the road, but they were smaller vehicles? So it's always had vehicles from the gravel pits go on Ledge Road?
There have been, but I mean, if you compare 25 trucks a day, smaller companies, not pickup, but little dump trucks, to now 22 wheel, these things are huge. Those regular delivery trucks can still go down and use that route, but it was.
So it's always had traffic on this road. It was to a lesser degree.
Absolutely.
Because of the extent of operation of the gravel.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. Any other members of the committee? Seeing none. Thank you again. I know this hasn't been easy. Just in order, I do see, I think, Mr. Olson. I would just ask you, Mr. Olson, you certainly can come up, but I do think if you agree with me that your wife made a thorough and eloquent presentation, in light of all the other witnesses, if you wouldn't mind deferring today, it would allow us more efficiency, because I believe the committee members have a complete sense that will allow us to get further into this.
Mr. Chairman, I will defer to your request, certainly. The only thing I would ask is that
Sure.
I could, at some point in the next few days, actually forward to you videos of what our words on paper and verbally don't capture the noise and disruption associated with these vehicles. I'd like to send those.
I think that would be great, and that's one of the reasons why we do, as a committee practice, keep the record open for an additional 10 days to supplement the record in that way. And thank you for understanding, Mr. Olson.
Thank you very much. I will say, if you don't mind, my wife has done more work on this issue than anyone in the town of Westfield in the last 5 years. Thank you.
She's having a tough enough time already. Do you have anything to say about the vice chair? I know Chelmsford and Lynn not far apart, but anyway, thank you again. I'm going to return at this point to the list of those who have signed up to testify remotely. It was mentioned earlier, I'd call them, in a sense, together, Kevin Dumas and Kara Griffin, on behalf of the Mansfield request we have. Are you still with us? Either Mr. Dumas or Ms. Griffin? We'll come back then. Also signing up remotely, Randall Lyons. Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, the floor is yours, Mr. Lyons.
Thank you kindly, Chair Strauss, Chair Crichton, and committee members. Thank you for your support on our voting caucus as well. By way of introduction, my name is Randall Lyons. I'm here to testify today on the Safe Boating Bill, HB 3362. I am the Executive Director for the Massachusetts Marine Trades Association. The MMTA, as it's known, represents the recreational boating industry in Massachusetts. There are approximately 140,000 registered and documented boats in the state, about 1,000 businesses, just under 20,000 employees, and we represent an economic impact of about $5 billion. Quick history of the bill. This bill was originally drafted over 10 years ago. It was named after David Hansen. On May 12, 2010, David tragically passed away in a boating accident at the age of 20. David was from Kingston, was an EMT and call firefighter with dreams of becoming a firefighter in Kingston. The MMTA has been involved in drafting and working with various legislative officials on this bill throughout the 10-plus year time frame. Recently, various states have passed new safe boating bills, including the most recent states, South Carolina and Maine, over the past few months. With the push and support of national associations within the industry, we are excited for the possibility of getting this bill over the finish line within the current legislative session. As Rep. Lenatra mentioned earlier, we are working with her office on adjusting a little bit of the language within the bill. A couple suggestions that we have made is that we remove the tiered phase-in section of the bill and instead have the requirement for certification for people born after 1989. The most recent states adapted, South Carolina used 2007 and Maine used 1999. So we are trying to be realistic within other states as well. After the law goes into effect, we would suggest providing a grace period for the required enforcement of the new requirement for the state agencies to make sure that they're ready for it. Also, we want to make sure that there's time from a marketing standpoint to let boaters know about safe boating regulations within the state, suggestions for safe boating, and just stressing the importance of the new bill and how important it is to allow boaters to learn more about safe boating within the Commonwealth. Final thoughts. So based on the increase here of boating in Massachusetts and on a national basis, the time is right to pass a sensible safe boating bill here in the state. The more comfortable and knowledgeable a boater is on the water, the better off it is for everyone. Rep. Lenatra mentioned the same statistic earlier. The Coast Guard statistic is that almost 75% of boating deaths occurred on boats where the operator had no boater safety instruction. With the opportunity to save lives, this bill makes sense for boaters, boating businesses, and the state. Paul Malone was the reason for the change in the name to the to the Hansen-Malone Act. Paul was a very well-respected harbor master from Weymouth, passed away in 2020. Paul taught safe boating regulations as the harbor master for 40-plus years. He was a very strong supporter of boater safety and this bill. With the change, which has been supported by Rep. Lenatra, to the Hansen-Malone Act, I think it's a great thing to have the support from both the Hansen and the Malone families. We are excited for the opportunity to promote and support this bill where and when possible. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Appreciate the testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again for testifying today. I now want to call on, I think he's here with us, signed up to testify, Peter Brown. Please come forward. I see. Okay. I'll manage that. We have. We'll call him after you conclude. Lawrence Mann.
Thank you.
Who's signed up online for cohesiveness on the testimony. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Chairman Strauss, Chairman Crichton, honorable members of the committee, my name is Peter Brown. I'm a resident of the North Shore. I'm an attorney in Boston, and I've become a reluctant train safety advocate over the past 4 years following the death of my best friend, Moses Schumo. Moses was struck and killed by a commuter rail train at the Beverly Depot train station on October 22nd, 2019. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to testify in support of Senate Bill 2507, an act relative to commuter rail pedestrian safety, which calls for the elimination of all passive at-grade crossings at commuter rail stations in the Commonwealth. While my involvement with this issue came from the personal tragedy that deeply affected me and my family, what I learned on this journey is that Moses' story is an all too familiar one within our transportation system. The numbers tell the story better than I can, but it's 165 train strikes involving pedestrians and bicyclists, resulting in at least 102 deaths in the past 6 years on our commuter rail system. That's 2017 to 2022, not even counting 2023. and this is separate from train strikes involving vehicles. Since just 2017, 102 people who are no longer coming home to their families because of a needless incident. Senate Bill 2507 addresses a dangerous condition that exists at 53 of our commuter rail stations. Those stations contain unprotected, or what is referred to as passive, at-grade pedestrian crossings. This means that people are directed to walk or ride their bike across the tracks at a station to get from one side to another. It puts the trains and the people on a direct collision course. It is a situation that begs for a tragedy to happen, and it has, and it will again if not changed. This bill, filed by Senator Lovely, it's simple, it's straightforward, it's essential. The bill requires that these 53 station crossings be converted to active crossings. This means the MBTA would supply a combination of either gates, gate skirts, zigzag fencings, and mid-track audible warning apparatuses, which are low cost to install. I've attached pictures of these types of crossings and devices in my written testimony. These active safety treatments are nothing new. They have been standard safety practices in the industry for over 15 years. They are recommended best practices by the FRA. They reinforce situational awareness for both the public and the train engineer. They save lives. And just briefly, let me go 2 steps further. Number one, these active safety treatments have been previously and specifically recommended by the FRA to the MBTA to be installed at commuter rail stations containing these at-grade crossings. This was provided to the MBTA and the DPU on May 3rd, 2022. It did not happen. Secondly, the MBTA's own commuter rail safety team recommended these very things that are in this bill in April 2020 for the Commonwealth's top 20 most problematic stations, and planned to have the work done within 4 months to celebrate Rail Safety Week in August of 2020. Yet here we are today, and these safety mechanisms have still not been installed at any of the state's at-grade pedestrian crossings. While we cannot get that time back or the lives that have been lost, we can do something about the present and the future. And reporting this bill favorably out of committee is a wonderful start. I'd just like to briefly introduce Attorney Mann. Attorney Mann has been working in rail safety for over 40 years. He's the nation's foremost expert on rail train safety, and I've asked him to appear and testify from Washington, D.C.
Before we call him, I tend to manage these things a little bit. Thank you very much for your testimony. I just want to point out that as a resource, I suppose, for the committee to use, you've taken the time, I see you have a copy in front of you, to submit for the committee a history, photographs, some of the other federal documents that have been issued on this subject, and to make clear, which I think it was from your testimony, the focus of the Senator Lovely's bill are these pedestrian crossings. This is not where they may exist otherwise in the state, vehicle crossings, although I don't mean to minimize the issues there, but this is on, you've got that number, but this is pedestrian or bicycle, however, but not vehicle crossings.
Correct, Mr. Chair. These are pedestrian crossings specifically located at our commuter rail stations.
Okay. I'll ask committee members if they have any questions to save them after we hear from Attorney Mann, who, if you're with us, the floor is yours for the next few minutes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a bit about my background. I've actually been involved in railroad safety matters at both the federal and state level for 55 years. I was a principal draftsman of the Federal Railroad Safety Act of 1970, which provides for the statutory authority for states to regulate railroad safety. I don't have to go back through what Mr. Brown has testified about. The problem exists and it needs to be addressed. It's a wake-up call. And Senate number 2507 goes a long way to deal with that. It's not been addressed at the federal level because the Federal Railroad Administration is obviously involved extensively in dealing with collisions between cars and trucks at grade crossings, which I hate to tell you, it's over 2,000 a year. That means it's about 5 each day. It's outrageous, but that's where the FRA's focus has been, not on pedestrian crossings. I want to point out that there is funding available at the federal level in the new infrastructure law and in an old law at 23 U.S. Code 130. They both provide funding for safety at crossings. And it's to be noted that subsection I of section 130 specifically provides for funding for bicycle safety, which could have been utilized to prevent Mr. Brown's friend from being killed. I'm not going back into the statistics. Mr. Brown set forth those in great detail. I simply want to close in saying that I congratulate Mr. Brown for his persistence. This is a significant safety issue would likely never would have been addressed would it not have been for Mr. Brown's involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any questions from members of the committee? Senator? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Brown for his advocacy on behalf of his friend Moses, and deeply sorry for his tragic loss of life. And I know how much work you've put in at great cost and hopefully prevent future tragedies from happening. This question is to either of you. You had mentioned that funding is available. I imagine these infrastructure improvements are pretty low cost compared to a lot of things we do with transportation. So if costs isn't an obstruction, I guess what is the reason not to do this? Have you been given any by the T or any administration as to why we can't make these simple changes at pedestrian crossings? Does it impact the operations at all, or just curious on their explanation?
Mr. Chair, we've been given no reason, and I believe Senator Lovely would state the same, that we made the request and they deal with a lot of other things, and this has unfortunately just not been a priority. But it is explicitly stated in the FRA guidance, and we've provided in the binder internal correspondence from the MBTA recommending these very things, saying they could do them, and their own risk manager classifying these safety treatments as quote unquote low cost. So unfortunately, there's been no good reason, but that's why we're here seeking legislation and hope the statutory mandate will bring about essential change.
Thank you. I just want to add one thing that, not for a lack of interest in the issue, you may not know at this point. Back in June, the committee drafted a committee bill, so it wasn't the subject of earlier public hearings, on the safety issue, mostly involving MBTA subway and bus use. But the bill that was reported does, and I hope you'll be happy, include, because I'm looking at the summary in section 1 of the bill, apart from the actual physical work that you're asking for, and Attorney Mann touched on this, there is I'll call it a vagueness in the federal law about safety oversight of the commuter rail operation here. And so we do expand the DPU, or what is currently DPU authority over transportation modes, to include commuter rail operations as well. So one way or another, I just want to assure you that the committee, and that was unanimously supported by written votes of the committee members in June, that there is a need even for both parts of what you're discussing here. I don't know if there are other questions. Senator Keenan, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an observation. Abington, which is within my district, has suffered many tragedies along its rail people move to the station, but as they cross over the tracks at least 2 areas. And for years, we were less than satisfied with the response of the MBTA and commuter rail to those issues at those crossings. I must say that based on a recent tragedy, and then with the new safety officer, the MBTA has been much more responsive. And I know that they are committed to improving safety at the crossings, and I presume it's the same type of situation that we're talking about. So while I believe pursuing this legislation is likely necessary, because it may fall off the radar screen of the MBTA, I would urge you to continue to push them, because I have found more recently, more so than ever in the past, that they have been responsive. There's still a lot more work to be done, but they at least have gone out, surveyed the site, talked to people in the town, have taken some remedial measures. So hopefully that can be a bit of a stopgap measure while more comprehensive approaches is undertaken.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I have been introduced to the family and been working with them on their advocacy, and they are making some progress, and we're grateful for that.
Not enough.
Not enough.
Thank you again, Mr. Brown. Thank you for coming in. I believe we have our colleague, Representative Sicolo, online to testify. If you're here and I see you, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Strauss and Chairman Crichton and members of the committee. I'm here to testify on H3284, which is an act to review the Municipal Transportation Chapter 90 Transportation Funding Program. During the public hearing process, of course, when we filed the Chapter 90 bill, there's a lot of conversation about the sufficiency of the funds, but each year we hear on a regular basis that that funding also needs to be evaluated as to how it's broken down. You all know that the formula is road miles, population, and jobs, but there are a lot of concerns from rural communities as well as urban communities that the formula is not keeping pace with what we need. The bill asks that we create a commission of 9 members chaired by the Secretary of Transportation to look at the sufficiency, effectiveness, and equitability of the Chapter 90 funding formula. As you know, the formula is not enshrined in law right now, but despite a lot of urging from the legislature and from other members, the administration has not yet gotten around to looking at whether or not this formula works well and whether or not it should be revised. In particular, I'm always concerned that the formula doesn't look at the width of roads or sidewalks and take into account the true maintenance responsibilities that cities and towns have, nor do we really have a great understanding of how fast those roads are deteriorating. We've been, making efforts in recent years to increase the amount of money that's available through the Chapter 90 program and other local road reimbursement programs, but if you talk to most cities and towns, I think they would tell you that the amount of money that's being appropriated is not enough to maintain the existing conditions of the roads, and that every year we slip backwards in the state of good repair, just like we have been with the MBTA, not keeping up with the amount that needs to be appropriate every year. Some cities and towns appropriate their own money, as you know, but it's often not a possibility for communities that are low and moderate income and don't have high levels of real estate taxes. So the bill is pretty simple. It does ask for membership from urban, rural, and suburban communities. It looks to the planning councils to appoint members, as well as the Mass Highway Association and the governor's office, and it creates a balanced commission and asks for a report to be filed within 1 year on the formula and the sufficiency of the funding. So that's it. It's pretty straightforward. I hope you'll consider reporting it favorably out of committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Rep. I know of your work in the subject area even before you joined the legislature in terms of the agencies and departments you worked with. So thank you for filing this bill. Are there any questions from members of the committee? If not, thank you again, Rep. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you.
Returning to the live sign-in list, I'll call up together Allie Hipple and Franny Osmond. a feeling, looking at the head on the list, we're going to dwell in detail, which is great, on this subject matter. So the floor is yours in either order that you want.
Awesome, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Crichton and Chair Strauss and members of the Transportation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Allie Heipel, and I'm a policy analyst with the Conservation Law Foundation. I'm testifying in support of S2217 H3392, an act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the MBTA commuter rail, and also in support of S2285 H3366, an act electrifying regional transit authorities. CLF is a co-convener of the Massachusetts Zero Emission Vehicle Coalition and a member of the Fairmount Indigo Transit Coalition, both of which are represented here today. These coalitions reflect a broad cross-section of groups working on matters of climate, environmental justice, transit, labor, community development, and public health. This wide range of interests underscores just how important and impactful these bills are. You'll hear from us now on, you'll hear from 3 panels total, us now on public health and environmental justice, then on the urgent climate need, and then finally on technology, cost, and feasibility. Both of these bills are an essential component of meeting Massachusetts' climate goals and providing a transportation system that best serves the Commonwealth. We need public transit options that are frequent and reliable and that don't pollute our air, harm our health, and contribute to climate change. Electrification is the answer to that. So I want to echo all the other powerful supporting testimony that you'll hear today, and also underscore a few key components of these bills that make them particularly important. S2217 H3392 sets deadlines for achieving commuter rail electrification targets with full electrification by 2035. Advocates have been fighting for electrified rail for a very long time, and it is far past time for additional plans, so having deadlines in the bill is essential. Another key component of the commuter rail bill is the prioritization of lines serving environmental justice communities, which are disproportionately impacted by air pollution and lack of transit service. Neighborhoods along the Fairmount line, for example, have some of the worst asthma rates in Boston, some of the highest concentrations of diesel particulate matter and PM 2.5 in the state, and are some of the hottest. And 83% of people who live within a half mile of the Fairmount line are Black or Latinx. So this is clearly an issue of public health and environmental justice. S2285 H3366 similarly sets electrification deadlines for RTAs and also includes prioritization for EJ populations. Another key component of the RTA bill is that it requires technical and financial assistance for achieving these requirements, which will help meet these goals without burdening RTAs and the municipalities that they serve. I respectfully request that you report both of these bills favorably out of committee, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
Okay, everybody does.
Well, not everybody. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairs Strauss and Crichton, and Vice Chairs Murray and Mark, if he's, I don't know if he's virtual.
He may be at this point. I know
Okay.
he wasn't at the beginning, but.
I'm Franny Osmond, and I'm the Legislative Specialist for Transportation for the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. And I'm here today in support of the same bills, H3392, S2217, an act setting deadlines to electrify the commuter rail, and H3366, Senate 2285, an act electrifying regional transit authorities. I serve on the board of the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, and I've been working for 19 years as a town volunteer to improve local and regional transit as members of the Acton Select Board, Transportation Committee, and Commission on Disabilities, and also on the Fitchburg Line Working Group. Electrification of our trains and buses is a game changer that is overdue. What will I say to my grandchildren when they ask why we waited so long to electrify our trains and buses in Massachusetts when we knew that their invisible fumes caused heart and lung diseases, and disproportionately so in people living in environmental justice communities? The League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, which has 3,000 members in 44 local leagues, likes these bills because they set a schedule, a deadline, as I heard discussed before, for electrification that starts with areas that serve and presently pollute environmental justice populations. For the trains, that means the Boston end of the Fairmount line and the Newburyport, Rockport lines, as well as the Stoughton Providence line. For the buses, that means cleaner air for the people who live in and use the buses in gateway cities served by Regional Transit Authority bus service, from Worcester to Lynn to Franklin. We appreciate also the job training that's included in the RTA bill. Buses and trains start and stop a lot. Electric vehicles do that quietly and quickly and cleanly. That means more frequent service and an easier commute for workers. This is good for daily lives and the economy. It means more connectivity, including a unified rail system in our future. Read North-South Rail Link between North Station and South Station, which is a priority of the 2020 Rail Vision and of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. Thank you very much for voting favorably and sending these bills to the floor for a full vote.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, and we'll continue with the panels now.
Thank you.
Next, in this topic area, call up three people, Dan McCarthy, Anna Vanderspeck, and I'm going to need help just reading the handwriting. Oh, yes, Lucia. I see that now. Okay. Any order you wish to proceed. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair Crichton, Chair Strauss, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to provide input on important transportation and zero-emission vehicle legislation that will support the Commonwealth's transition to a clean and sustainable transportation future. My name is Dan McCarthy, and I'm the Transportation and Toxics Coordinator for the Massachusetts Sierra Club. Today, I'm testifying in support of an act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the commuter rail and an act electrifying regional transit authorities. As you all know, climate change is an imminent threat that demands immediate action. In Massachusetts, this year even, we are already experiencing the impacts of a changing climate, with storms that are increasing in severity, more frequent flooding that damages our homes and businesses, and even wildfire smoke that choked the air we breathed this past summer. To mitigate and prevent the impacts of climate change, we must reduce our carbon emissions and build a cleaner and more equitable future. The Commonwealth has recognized the threat of climate change and established goals for emissions reductions through the Clean Energy and Climate Plan, but much more work is needed to actually meet those emissions reductions goals. These two bills provide actionable timelines and guidance for decarbonizing our public transportation systems. An act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the commuter rail would establish a 2035 deadline for electrification, decreasing our emissions by replacing the diesel-powered trains and helping achieve our 2050 net zero emission goals. An act electrifying regional transit authorities also sets a 2035 deadline for bus fleet electrification and includes interim targets for a phased approach. Critically, the bill requires the Department of Transportation to create a central office to support the RTAs through the multi-year process of fleet replacement, as well as providing planning and technical expertise. Properly planning and implementing electrification for both systems will take time, and we can no longer delay addressing our fossil fuel reliance. By passing this legislation, the Commonwealth can act now to achieve our zero emission goals on time. These two bills also provide the opportunity to invest in our public transit systems and to improve the frequency and reliability of both the commuter rail and our RTA fleets. We know that improving the reliability, frequency, and accessibility of public transit increases ridership. It expands economic opportunities and encourages a mode shift for transportation that will further reduce our emissions and decrease vehicle miles traveled. Shifting away from our reliance on individual fossil fuel vehicles and investing in a robust, clean, and reliable public transit system is just as necessary for reducing emissions and addressing climate change. I urge you to favorably report out to the committee both of these bills and to invest in a clean, reliable transportation for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you again for this opportunity to provide testimony. I think we will be saying lots of the similar things, so I will do the sort of Cliff Notes version. My name is Anna Vanderspeck. I'm the Electric Vehicle Program Director at Green Energy Consumers Alliance, which is a local nonprofit, and I'm also here to support S2217 H3392 and S2285 H3366. What I want to do with my 2.5 minutes is really bring this back to the Clean Energy and Climate Plan, because we see these bills as really fulfilling some of the calls in that CECP for what needs to get done. So we all know we need to reduce economy-wide emissions 50% by 2030. The Clean Energy and Climate Plan says the transportation sector needs to reduce by 34% in that same time period because it's the largest sector source. We haven't done a good job of decreasing emissions in that sector. And in the Clean Energy and Climate Plan, there are specific strategies that we're supposed to be undertaking within the transportation sector. Strategy number 4 is about fleet electrification. The Clean Energy and Climate Plan explicitly calls out we need to electrify public and private fleets, and we need to do that in a way that maximizes equity and public health benefits, and we see both of these bills as doing that. For reasons that have already been explained and will continue to be explained. But one thing I want to call out, as Dan did, about the RTA electrification bill is that it directs the Department of Transportation to create a central planning and procurement office. And we know that electrification is challenging, it is complicated. The RTAs don't necessarily have the resources or the expertise to do that on their own. So the fact that that is included in that bill we see as really key. Secondly, the first strategy in the transportation section of the Clean Energy and Climate Plan is to reduce vehicle miles traveled, to reduce our reliance on individual cars, and we see the commuter rail electrification piece as really meeting both of these goals. 1, it's electrifying a fleet, and 2, it's taking the steps that we need to take to offer more frequent service that can transform our commuter rail system from the sort of outdated 20th century model it is now to something that serves more people, can come more frequently, can meet the needs of people today in the greater Boston area. Finally, I just want to highlight that both of these bills address vehicles that use diesel fuel, which is disproportionately polluting. I think somebody's already cited the science I was going to cite today, but diesel-powered vehicles disproportionately pollute, both in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and particulate matter and NOx and SOx emissions and all the things that harm public health. So we really see these two as targeting one of the more dangerous fuels out there. So with that, I urge you to report both of these bills out favorably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lucia Dolan, and I'm with the Transportation Working Group of 350 Mass. TWG believes reliable, accessible, and affordable public transportation is a public good, vital to improving our environment and reducing inequality. I'll try not to repeat what they said because they covered a lot of it. But one thing I did not really know is that electrifying both the trains and the buses, the diesel buses, improves the air not only for the people outside, but for the people inside. And the air inside a diesel bus and train is actually worse than the air outside of it. The bills to improve and electrify commuter rail and regional transit support the primary strategies that she just referred to in the Clean Energy and Climate Plan. And since the Clean Energy and Climate Plan has been adopted, Massachusetts vehicle miles traveled had continued to increase. And one of the ways to reduce the vehicle miles traveled is transit-oriented development. And I live in Newton. And in Newton, we are struggling to pass the MBTA communities zoning, the MBTA Communities Act zoning for it. And we just had a local election that was described as a bloodbath for candidates who supported increased housing development. Traffic congestion is a primary reason given by opponents. And we have the commuter rail running through Newton and 3 inaccessible stations with very low ridership, and it stops infrequently. A lot of our housing development is going along the commuter rail. There have been surveys locally on why people do not support housing, and some of the quotes are, the MBTA services cannot support high-density housing as it stands. MBTA needs to do major improvements before housing increases. Traffic is unbearable now and will be so much more so when more housing comes. Pushing for housing without a concrete plan to address the MBTA is irresponsible and bordering on reckless. Our governor has just recently appointed some really great people to leave MassDOT. Please support their efforts and vote not only for these 2 bills, but also for the funding necessary to make public transportation in Massachusetts frequent, reliable, accessible, and electric. To quote the recently released recommendations of Massachusetts Climate Chief, The investment required to achieve economy-wide decarbonization in the Commonwealth will be substantial, yet the cost of failing to make these investments will be even greater.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to pose a variation on an issue I raised with the first two witnesses really today, my colleagues, Rep. Owens and Rep. Armini. Because of the, I was going to say intersection, because of the multiple issues here that are present, so it's a transportation issue, it's environmental issue, it's a health issue, it's environmental justice, it's housing. All these things come together, requires resources, difficult decisions to be made ultimately by the administration. To the extent, using that phrase, low-hanging fruit, are there priorities within this subject matter that any of you, and I'll leave this for the rest of the witnesses coming up, are there priority, even being specific is okay, projects that yield some mix of these results, because they don't all have the same value in their accomplishment to every person in favor of this issue. So it's a difficult question, and I wouldn't mind if you took a pass, I'll bet, but please take a shot at where there can be either a focus or a way to evaluate where the focus should be. I didn't mean to just stare at you.
So on the RTA electrification first, I was lucky enough to go to Mass Inc.'s Gateway Cities Summit conference last week, and this was actually one of the topics that they discussed, was that there's so much variation between the RTAs in terms of what buses they currently run, where they're housed, how long the routes are. I'm not an expert in all of that, but I know that there are folks in all those RTAs who are experts at that, and I think that sort of points back to that need for a central planning entity somewhere within state government to talk to all those people and say, okay, with our limited resources, where are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck, while also balancing equity and making sure that we are covering all the regions. I think that I don't have the answer to that question, and I think that's one of the reasons why that bill is so important. On commuter rail, I will ping pong that question to our friends at Transit Matters, who are the experts on that. But there is absolutely, there's a phased approach. There are different lines that would be easier to electrify in the short, medium, and long term. And I'm sure that they will answer that question very eloquently when we are not here.
Very diplomatic. Do you want to take a shot at it? No, okay. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it. Continuing on this topic of these bills, the next panel would be Lisa Theriault from IBEW, and then both from Transit Matters, Jarrett Johnson and Jackson Otto Moore? Moore. Okay. Any order, you want to start? Sure.
Thank you so much for having us here today. I'm Lisa Theriault with IBEW Local 103. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to testify today. I respectfully ask that the committee report on these bills favorably, as they are vital policy proposals to ensure no worker is left behind in the transition to clean energy, and all the green jobs are good jobs. As the largest union of skilled electricians across the state, IBEW Local 103 is uniquely positioned to support the increasing demand for energy initiatives, including electrifying our public transportation system. Our members possess the expertise and technical knowledge required to install, service, and maintain the intricate electrical systems that underpin the infrastructure necessary to meet our clean energy goals. We are proud to be key players in the growth of this market in Massachusetts, and we firmly believe that prioritizing renewable energy, energy efficiency, and sustainability in the clean energy sector is not only vital for environmental protection, but also crucial to generating more family-sustaining jobs for Massachusetts workers and our long-term economic growth. At IBW Local 103, we are able to scale up and scale down according to the market. In order to grow our workforce, we must pass these legislative efforts for the jobs to be there. You can't grow an industry of workers and not have jobs waiting for them. We have been committed to creating a more diversified membership and contractor base. With the help of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director, we have grown our diverse contractor base by 50%. We have committed to growing our membership filled with people of color, women, and veterans. The past 2 years, both of our first-year apprenticeship classes have been more than 52% women and people of color. We believe that every person deserves the same pay and benefits regardless of gender or color. All of our members graduating from our apprenticeship program are EVITP certified for the installation of EV charging stations. They are fully trained to build all aspects of clean energy infrastructure and receive intense safety training, making them the best highly trained and skilled electricians in the country. EV charging infrastructure is a necessary part of transitioning to an all-electric bus fleet to create a greener and cleaner environment. We had the honor of installing the EV charging stations for the first fleet of Boston Public School buses, and in Mayor Wu's own words, we couldn't have done it without you. We are ready and more than capable to do the same for the public transit system. Any legislation regulating the burgeoning clean energy sector must include strong workforce standards and support for displaced workers. Labor unions and environmental organizations are united in the understanding that our efforts to fight the devastating impact of climate change must not come at the expense of working families in Massachusetts. My members want good, family-sustaining jobs and safe and clean communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, all, and as always, I have very good things to say about the senator from Lynn. My name is Jackson Morato. I'm here with Transit Matters, and I'm here to testify on House 3392 and Senate 2217, an act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the commuter rail, and I'm very happy to testify in support. I'll be specifically addressing the electrification technology aspect of these bills, and I'll try to keep my comments as short as I can. So, commuter rail electrification, coupled with frequent all-day service and other best practices, will transform a legacy asset that still manages to punch above its weight into a modern rail system that will benefit the entire Commonwealth. The infrastructure is largely there. It's a matter of electrifying and ramping up service, both of which this bill provides for. By making a few key investments, we can transform our transportation system, enhance mobility and economic opportunity, and improve our decarbonization trajectory. This legislation puts us on track to make this transformation by requiring system-wide electrification using a phased approach that prioritizes environmental justice communities. And in addition to requiring electrification, the bill requires the TTE to prepare for higher frequency rail service, which is crucial to mode shift. So why is electrification so important? Why make this the focus of the bill? And how does it support higher quality service with all of its benefits? I want to address a few different things that I think really show the benefits of electrification. The first is reliability. Our data shows that electric trains are 1 to 2 orders of magnitude times more reliable than diesel locomotives. They also accelerate much more quickly and deaccelerate more quickly. That's particularly important on closely spaced lines like the Fairmount line, which is one of the priority lines in this bill. We, in our reports, estimate that electrification using electric multiple units, which are the current gold standard, would cut end-to-end travel time by 13 minutes. That's a 43% increase in travel time on the Fairmount line. On the Providence line, likewise, a trip from South Station to Providence would go from 1 hour and 27 minutes, basically 1 hour and a half, to just 46 minutes. Frequent service, reliability, and increased speed make regional rail an option not just for suburb to downtown commuters, but for students getting to and from school, intra-city commuters, and essential workers with off-peak travel patterns. It provides another mobility option to Gateway City residents and another option for subway riders, as we so recently saw. In doing this, electrification and the attendant service improvements boost opportunity and cut emissions. They provide another, better travel option that will help get people out of cars, drive mode shift, and ensure that our decarbonization strategy for transportation, which is already our largest emissions sector, doesn't just bank on single occupancy electric vehicles. And this legislation very wisely foregrounds electrification and explicitly mentions overhead catenary. I know that this is a significant capital undertaking, and it might strike some as new. But I want to emphasize that this technology has been around for over a century. It's employed in every continent across the world, and we can do it here in Massachusetts.
Hello, Chairs Crichton and Strauss, members of the Joint Transportation Committee. My name is Jared Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Transit Matters. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I'm speaking in strong support of H3366, which is also Senate Bill 2217, and H3392, Senate Bill S2285. I'd like to echo the words of my fellow panelists and also thank the authors, but I would also like to add that dedicated funding, as well as capacity, a commitment to mode shift and better service, and most importantly, urgency, are essential to the success of these efforts. Funding is urgently needed to ensure that these plans come to fruition in time to meet the state's 2050 decarbonization deadline. It has been about 4 years since the electrification of the commuter rail network became official MBTA policy. However, not very much has happened in that time. In fact, it was your leadership, Chair Crichton, that pushed the MBTA to finally hire a staffer and begin providing regular updates. While COVID no doubt played a role in this, the primary reason for inaction was a lack of funding. Indeed, the MBTA has not held up their end of the bargain to produce an implementation plan or a cost estimate for regional rail. However, to be fair, the MBTA is still the only large agency without a dedicated source of funding for its capital projects. This means that only the projects with revenue-backed bonds and an immense amount of political support move beyond a cursory design phase. And the agency must rely on MassDOT for much of its planning capacity, which is yet another anomaly. All of this adds considerable time and cost that we don't have time for. While many RTAs are making great strides in electrification, these agencies are extremely resource constrained, even more so than the T. All of us were happy to see the addition of $56 million for the RTAs in the latest budget. However, that is just the first step needed to provide an equitable level of transportation access across the Commonwealth. As noted, considerable funding and planning capacity must be afforded to the RTAs to make sure that electrification does not negatively impact current service nor plans for expansion. To this point, service quality and frequency must be ironclad elements of electrification. Public transit amounts for a relatively small part of transportation sector emissions. This, of course, means nothing to the parents of children with schools and playgrounds next to commuter rail tracks or people whose homes are next to bus facilities. But it does mean that in order to be as effective as possible, service must go hand in hand with electrification, and mode shift must be our North Star. Just as important as getting to zero emissions from these vehicles is their ability to draw folks off of our crowded roadways and to reduce the amount of harmful particulate matter from brakes and tires in people's lungs as well as in our rivers and streams. Massachusetts is well behind our peers in California and Washington State in calling for a significant reduction in VMT. We must catch up. One of the critical ways to address the challenges of climate change, the nation's worth housing costs, traffic congestion, and income inequality, in addition to regional inequity, is electrifying public transit while dramatically increasing the operating funding to ensure that these services, these electric buses and trains, are providing a world-class level of service and are full of riders. We need to act now in order to make sure that we have any chance of meeting the goals outlined. For example, in California, the 51 miles of Caltrain electrification, that project started in 2011, and full service is expected to begin next year. The MBTA has 394 miles of track. And we also need to make sure that we're providing enough funding to electrify not only today's RTA fleet, but an RTA fleet that needs to be able to handle millions of more trips into the future than it does currently. These bills have the potential to be some of the most transformative pieces of legislation that the General Court has passed in a generation, but only with the funding, commitment to mode shift, and urgency needed to bring them to fruition and make them successful. Thank you. Thanks for the extra time.
Thank you to the panel. As you heard, the prior panel, and it was playful, I think, nominated this panel to answer, and I hope you accept the nomination.
Sure.
This panel to describe, I described it as low-hanging fruit, but a couple of things, and then just let any of you, among you, cover it. First, I may be splitting hairs. I know, Mr. Johnson, you said that there's no dedicated funding source for capital projects for the T. I mean, certainly I can't overlook the fact that for years now, a penny of the sales tax, roughly $1 billion a year, is paid by people everywhere in the state to support the T. Now, maybe most of it is budgeted as if it was operations, but sometimes the difference between an operation expense and a capital expense is somewhere in the gray area in taking care of the assets. So, so my question is really twofold that I raised before. Where is the low-hanging fruit anywhere in the transportation system? And because we had I thought, a helpful but sobering number from the T, from the general manager in a presentation last week of $25 billion to take care of what exists over the next 10 years or so, plus run the system. My second question would be, do we have a sense of what this is going to cost? Because I think that's has to be part of our discussion with the public as to how to meet this goal and what it will take financially in order to do it. So I apologize for the long-winded question, but meant to open it up to you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate it, Chair. The general manager also, he cautioned that $25 billion number is a number to sort of plan around. It's not necessarily that check is needed. And included in that number are things like replacing our failing diesel locomotives or doing track repair and other upgrades to the commuter rail network in and of itself. So there's an opportunity to sort of piggyback off of some of that work in that. And that we also think about, as you mentioned, sort of talking about, where's the money going to come from to not only fix what we already have, but to continue maintaining it. That's one of the other benefits of electrified transit, is that it is much easier and often significantly cheaper to maintain in the long run. And so that is, I think that's important to note there. And again, going back to one of the comments from the last panelist around housing. Housing and other commercial development presents a incredible opportunity to add revenue to the system by looking at how we can build on top of stations, on top of commuter rail parking lots, and then when we have an electrified system, even spanning the tracks on kind of air rights projects that you've seen on highway infrastructure. So I think that's the first part, and then yes, fully acknowledging what you said around the sales tax revenue, but I think what's important there is that money, yes, since most of it is dedicated to the operating, what it means is that the T does not have the planning independence that other agencies have whenever they have a sort of a stream of money that is just for capital and that the operating side can't touch. As we, I would say, I think one of the few good things that happened in the last administration around finance at the T was really trying to do somewhat of a better job of separating out and not using capital funds to pay operating and all of that. But the fact that the T does not have its own planning office and does not have that dedicated source of funding means that there are a wild array of projects that the T is doing some amount of planning on, but they never get to an advanced stage because there's not that significant dedicated funding source. In fact, the T, I think, is going to have about a third as much funding available for its capital this upcoming year, now that the bonds for Green Line Extension and South Coast Rail are starting to be closed out, and there's not yet that identified other funding source. But to your second point around the low-hanging fruit, as others have mentioned, certainly the Providence line, which is mostly electrified. It just needs, in fact, I believe Amtrak is electrifying the last bit of it. However, the MBTA will need to electrify its yards and then purchase the train. So the low-hanging fruit would be providing enough money for the purchase of those vehicles as well as a maintenance facility. And it would also be providing funding to do the initial design work and some of the pre-construction work for the Fairmount line. These are things that can happen in the next 1 to 3 years, as well as looking at providing high-level platforms, turn tracks at Beverly, and some of the initial sort of prerequisite infrastructure on the EJ corridor, the line between Boston and Beverly going through Lynn and Salem, which might take a little bit longer to electrify since there's not already power on the north side. But those, I think, are some of the low-hanging fruit. But also, I would add in there planning capacity to be able to give a substantial amount of funding, somewhere in that $5 to $10 million range that is specifically dedicated just towards rail vision and towards moving that process forward. I think that would be a huge step. I believe right now the T finally has, I think, 2 people now working on this, but as you can imagine, as I said earlier, 394 miles of commuter rail track. They need significantly more than just 2 folks working on it.
Right. And either one, you want to chime in or add to this?
If I may quickly add a point, and I can also follow up on this in written testimony, I think we tend very naturally as humans to talk about upfront costs. How much is this going to cost now? What is the price tag? But I think we also need to talk, particularly when we talk about the climate crisis, in terms of life cycle costs. How much does this cost over 50 years, over the cost, the cycle of a locomotive or a train set? And I know that the T themselves has said, this is from an old FMCB board meeting presentation, that in 2030 they're going to hit a locomotive cliff where their locomotives will either be obsolete or will need to go into midlife overhaul, which is in essence when they're rebuilt by a contractor. So, we can talk about the cost of buying new trains, but we also need to talk about the cost of maintaining ever more obsolete diesel equipment, of buying new diesel locomotives if we don't electrify under ever more stringent EPA regulations that make these purchases more costly. So I think this is a policy area that needs to push us in the direction of more systemic thinking, of long-term thinking, and I think the costs start to look quite different when we do that.
I want to be mindful of the time. Just in terms of a number, and nobody, no one today at this stage could give us a complete one, but I did sense that the $25 billion over, and I think the general manager said over 10 years, that he was identifying throughout the system. But it sounds like you're talking in the bills about, although there may be some overlap, it's going to be more than that to cover these added goals, or not? What's your view?
Perhaps. I mean, I think we just saw in Montreal a project that, somewhat different, but still we saw a project come dramatically under the transit costs for projects around the country. Now that involved giving over a substantial amount of control to the quasi-private entity that was managing it, the Quebec Teachers Fund, that managed it, doing things such as removing the ability of municipalities to stop, doing things such as, giving municipalities plans and giving them, a fixed number of days to stamp the plans, and then if not, as long as they met base criteria, they went ahead. Versus looking at other projects around the U.S. where delays can cost upwards of $100 million just because cities take 3 or 4, months or even longer to return those back. So, we've had a range of estimates. Obviously, we're a very small, nonprofit trying to sort of do this on a, quasi-amateur basis. So we've had ranges from, in the $3 and $5 billion range. At one point, the T estimated it around $30 billion. And I think that's why that $5 to $10 million is a very wise investment, because that's the kind of money that allows you to get better estimates
for the plan
on these things. Exactly, to get to that deeper level. And then again, that's also where looking at this as a whole and looking at, again, where are there opportunities for the private sector, either in the next commuter rail procurement contract, and the conversation about, is there a longer term contract where the operator puts in a substantial amount of their own capital, or again, looking at what are the opportunities for commercial development in and around stations and having that cover part of the cost.
Thank you. Thank you to the panel.
Yes. Thank you all.
Any questions from members of the committee? I apologize. No. Thanks again.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
I do understand that our colleague, Senator Lovely, is available online. Senator, I'd like to recognize you. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To you and to Chair Crichton and members of the committee, thank you for taking me out of order this afternoon. I'm here to testify on Senate number 2507, an act relative to commuter rail pedestrian safety. On October 22nd, 2019, Dr. Moses Shumo rode his bike to the Beverly Depot Trail Station. Dr. Shumo was following a few seconds behind a group of pedestrians, and as he rode his bike across the pedestrian at-grade crossing, he was struck and killed by a train. He didn't see it coming. He didn't hear it coming. And unfortunately, Dr. Shumo's story is not unique. Since 2017, there have been over 100 pedestrian fatalities by trains, many of those at pedestrian passive at-grade crossings. And while our T has recently announced safety initiatives at vehicular crossings, pedestrians at 53 commuter rail stations are still making dangerous crossings each day on these at-grade crossings with no warning signals, no gates, no other safety mechanisms. This lack of safety measures has led to too many trains hitting or almost hitting pedestrians and far too many deaths. So what would this bill do? It would require the T to eliminate all passive pedestrian at-grade crossings by installing low-cost and essential safety mechanisms such as gates, gate skirts, zigzag fencing, and mid-track audible warning devices. These safety measures lead to better situational awareness by both pedestrians and train engineers. What this bill would not do, would not require the T to eliminate at-grade crossings at commuter rail stations completely. Rather, make them safe. Make them safer with low cost, gates, gate skirts, zigzag fencing, audible warnings so that people know. Because we know, we've heard too often that, that trains, people don't hear them coming. And then by then it's too late. So I was asked to file this bill, and I so appreciate the committee giving it a very quick hearing. It was just filed a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Moses Shumo used the Beverly Depot train station daily to get in from his job. And it's incredibly tragic that this has happened, but to over 100 other pedestrians just in the last 5-6 short years. So I will stop there. Happy to answer any questions, and I so appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for joining us. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again, Senator.
Thank you.
I'll continue with the list of people who've signed up remotely as I try and balance the two modes of testimony. I want to return and just see if they have rejoined us. I had called earlier Kevin Dumas and Kara Griffin regarding the Mansfield station on the 95.
Yes, Chair Strauss. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good, good. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, and also Chair Crichton as well. I really appreciate the opportunity and apologize that I was unable to come at the time of which you had Senator Feeney and later called us, and I apologize for that. But just wanted to go and speak in favor of S2235 for the opportunity for something that's really important as a gateway to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, predominantly as its location is in the town of Mansfield. I know that Rep. Barrows had also spoken in favor of that and talked about the partnership with Mansfield Municipal Electric Department and the opportunity for also the possibility of creating charging stations at this location. But most importantly, as a gateway to Massachusetts, and for all the points that Senator Feeney made, as well as to all of the regional I'll say placemaking opportunities, in addition to hosting the second largest business park in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the Cabot Park. It's really important that as a gateway to Massachusetts that we actually have a point of rest and to be able to have as a place for people to be able to appropriately use a visiting station and the proper bathrooms. This site is in such complete disrepair. It certainly isn't the welcome message to Massachusetts. Certainly the gateway to the Cape and Islands as well. We do appreciate and work in tandem and with not only with our Chamber of Commerce, but with other people and other organizations to be able to, whatever we have to do long term in order to be able to house and to be able to have this facility back up and running. But also the assessment of what needs to be done. The property is in really rough shape. For 2 years, it had been used by Mass DOT as a space for construction activity and holding all of the new signage that was put up for the highways. Half of it had been blocked off for actual use of the public. But they try their best with picking up garbage. But there's a series of porta johns that are at this location, and it's truly a disgrace for welcoming in for Massachusetts for residents, and some people not using the facilities properly. If you catch my understanding of that, and other behavior that happens there really isn't an example of what Massachusetts has to shine. So we're hopeful by this opportunity, having that assessment done, whatever it takes in order for us to be able to have this in a state-of-the-art condition, as we continue to be able to work with the United States Congress to be able to have the exemptions necessary to turn it into eventually something into a much higher and better use. At least we need to be able to show at this point to get this into a better condition overall for the motoring public, also for all those men and women who are driving all the goods and services that are needed from around bringing goods to Massachusetts is also very important as well. So we hope that this would receive kind consideration. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none. And I don't know, is Kara Griffin still with us? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Dumas. Continuing, a couple more witnesses from the online list. Patty Batchelder, are you with us? Okay. Now I'll return to the sign-in list. Andrew Jennings.
Thank you, Chairman Strauss and Chairman Crichton and all the other members of the Transportation Committee for taking time to listen to my testimony today. My name is Andrew Jennings. I live in North Billerica. Transportation has been both an avocation and a vocation to my entire life. I volunteer as Billerica's representative on the Lowell Regional Transit Authority Board, and I'm on the Transportation Committee of the Massachusetts chapter of the Sierra Club. But my testimony today are my personal views and do not necessarily reflect the views of the town of Billerica, the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, or the Sierra Club. I'm here today to support both the commuter rail electrification bill and the RTA electrification bill. Others have already focused on the climate, health, and operational benefits of electrification, and so I will focus on why these bills are necessary. The commuter rail bill is necessary because the low-hanging fruit of the Providence line has not been advanced, even though Amtrak electrified that line in the year 2000. Yes, a substation or two may be required. A wire needs to be put up on some small segments of track that commuter rail uses that Amtrak doesn't. But there have been serviceable electric locomotives that were available which could have been used in the short term while waiting for the acquisition of new equipment. The Providence line should have been electrified years ago. On the RTA electrification bill, the most important part of that bill is the office in MassDOT that will be tasked with the technical planning, grant writing, procurement, and worker retraining support for implementation of the electric vehicle bus rollout plans. Implementation of RTA bus electrification is a challenging task. It is a lot more than buying the bus and plugging it into the nearest outlet. When the legislature created the RTAs, they did not allow the RTAs to directly operate their services. Operations are therefore contracted out, leaving the RTAs with very small staffs without electrification expertise. It does not make sense for each of the 15 RTAs to separately staff up and hire electrification experts. The MassDOT office proposed in this bill is an essential part of RTA electrification. Thank you for your time.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for attending today. I'm not sure he's still here, signed up. Colin Anderson? You stayed? Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Colin Anderson, and I'm from Braintree, Massachusetts. I wanted to express my support for Senate Bill 2217 to set deadlines to electrify the commuter rail. I wanted to start by thanking Senator Timilty for expressing his support for this bill earlier this year, and I wanted to secondly express how important this bill is, because I believe that commuter rail electrification would not only cut down on the emissions from trains, but a regional rail system with increased frequencies would attract more riders, reducing the number of cars on the road, which would further reduce transit emissions. The increased frequencies and faster train speeds would go along with the regional rail system, would give riders greater options on when and where to take the commuter rail beyond just taking them to and from work. And Massachusetts needs to be more proactive in fighting climate change, and a modernized and electrified regional rail system would be an important step to reduce further emissions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you for coming today. Next signed up, Andrealis Martinez. Sure.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity of testifying today. My name is Andrealis Martinez, and I'm one of the Climate Justice Community Organizer with the Fairmont Indigo CDC Collaborative, which is made up of 3 community development corporations that serve the Boston neighborhoods and community along the Fairmont line, like Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Hyde Park. I'm here today testifying on behalf of the collaborative and also the communities that we serve in support of the H3392 S2217, an act related to setting deadlines to electrify the MBTA commuter rail. The entirety of the Fairmont Corridor, it's an environmental justice community as defined by the 2021 Climate Roadmap Act. 1/5 of the population of Boston, 83 of whom are Black and Latino, live within half a mile of the Fairmont line. If you ride the Fairmont line, you will notice that it runs right through people's backyards. The diesel fuel line directly contributes to local air pollution, which then makes for poor respiratory health and worsening climate change impacts, which has been already disproportionately affecting the Fairmont Corridor. The Fairmont Corridor is in the top 20% in the state for exposure to particulate matter 2.5. And the presence of diesel particulate matter is also in the top 20% in 7 out of the 9 stations along the Fairmont line and their surrounding communities. As a result, the sections of the Fairmont line between Blue Hill Avenue and Penn's Corner Station have the highest number of incidents of asthma in the city of Boston. It has been frustrating, concerning, and costly for community members to be exposed to air pollutants from the train every day. For example, we have heard from community members who live along the Fairmont line who have to regularly wipe black soot off their tables and window sills, and from residents whose respiratory health has declined since moving nearby the line. I say all of this because an act related to setting deadlines to electrify the MBTA commuter rail can transform the life of not only the Fairmont line community, but all the communities that the MBTA commuter rail runs through and serve. If passed, this bill will set the Fairmont line to be one of the commuter rails, to be the first commuter rail to be electrified in the state. In electrifying the Fairmont line will not only immediately improve her air quality in the neighborhoods in the Fairmont Corridor's resident, but it will also bring Massachusetts closer to its fossil fuel infrastructure and closer to the Commonwealth climate goals. Electrification also enables fast, frequent, and reliable service on the commuter rail line, delivering a high-quality rapid transit option to communities that have long seen unmet demand from increased mobility options. We need this to happen for safer, healthier communities and to reduce contribution to the impacts of climate change in Boston and Massachusetts. Passing H3392 S2217 will be a big win for us, the communities, the state, and the world. So on behalf of myself and the collaborative, I urge you to please report this bill favorably out of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bush-Miles?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Mela Bush-Miles, and I am here on behalf of the Fairmont Indigo Transit Coalition and Action for Equity. I have been involved with the Fairmont line for about almost like 20 years now. I work to develop to lead the community process to get the stations built. And I grew up along the line, and we never had access to the train. We used to watch the circus trains go by with the animals in it when we were children. So this is very important to us because all of the facts and figures that have been presented here today, I will not go back and belabor those points. But some of the things that are very important right now is the fact that life expectancy, it can be determined by your zip code. One of those things, there was a study done, and it's 28 years less life expectancy in Roxbury than it is in the Back Bay for people. And so some of the reasons for this are the health impacts of what goes on with the diesel particulates and the pollution, and the impact of, for example, along the Fairmont line, where people are being made sick. And we fought so hard to get these trains in so that people could be able to have access to better public transit and to be able to move about freely from one community to the other, not just to get to the inner downtown. But this is a lifeline for our community, and it's also a matter of life and breath. And so we're very concerned about the timeline and making sure that these processes move forward quickly, because we don't have any time to lose. And the fact that 30 years less of life is something that's a reality. And as I age and have become grandmother and more, I really feel like if we don't do something right now, the time is now. We don't have any time to delay. It's very important that these bills be moved forward because our children and our great-grandchildren are actually the ones who are being impacted by this. I have 2 great-grandchildren at my young age, and one of them started manifesting asthma symptoms, and she's going to be 2 next month. And to watch a child that small with having an asthma attack and gasping for breath, that's something that is unacceptable. So I'm almost out of time, but the stalled trains that, because the Fairmont line is a highly traveled line and it's used to transport trains back and forth to storage in Meadville, sometimes those trains are stalled out there in traffic waiting to get to South Station or waiting to get back to Reedville. And where they stall out, I've seen them, can be around the Carbon Square Talbot Ave station. And there's a senior building right there. And over time, we've put up air quality monitors to see what was the impact that was going on. The black soot is something, but the people who live in that building have been made sick. Those buildings have been made sick. And so they're manifesting these negative health outcomes. So we don't have forever. We have to get this thing done right now. And so we're asking that House Bill 3392 and 2217 be moved out of committee and that it be passed sooner rather than later because people don't have any time to delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well stated. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you both.
Thank you.
I want to return to the online list. Emmanuel DeBarros, Are you with us? Oh, okay. Back to the sign-in list. Ben Murphy. Okay. Owen Sullivan. Thank you.
Sorry, it was pretty huge.
That's all right.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for hearing me today, and at the risk of extreme redundancy, I'd like to speak on behalf of MassPIRG in support of House Bill 3392, House Bill 3366, and Senate and the corresponding Senate bills, Senate 2217 and 2285. My name is Owen Sullivan. I'm a MassPIRG associate and a lifelong Bostonian, and I've been using our public transit since I was 10 years old. MassPIRG is a 50-year-old member-supported statewide nonpartisan public health or public interest advocacy organization working to protect public health, consumers, and our environment. And I want to say three very short things to summarize what's already been said about these House bills. We're supporting these bills because they endorse Massachusetts' commitment to climate, public health, and towards modernizing our public transit. Our various modes of transportation account for approximately 2/3 of all total greenhouse gas emissions in the state. And electrification reduces the environmental load of these sources as we meet emission standards and reduce pollution in the Commonwealth. These bills create a pathway towards repairing our public transit system and bringing it to a globally competitive standard. Not only can electrification improve train speed, as we heard, but they usually have 20 to 35% lower repair costs and 50% lesser running costs. So this is an investment in our future and future-proofs these systems for generations to come. Again, I've used public transit my entire life as my primary mode of transportation. I actually only got my driver's license this past July, even though I'm 23. And so this is a deeply important issue to me, and I've sat on the same commuter rail trains my entire life and just watched them get increasingly more decrepit with each passing year, and it's very hard to see. And I really hope that you'll support these bills and pass them favorably out of this committee. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry for the redundancy.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again.
Of course.
The last name I have for the sign-ins live, Bob Watson.
Yes.
I've got you on both lists. You had it covered. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for holding this important hearing. My name is Bob Watts. I live in Georgetown, transit desert, and I'm here today to offer testimony in favor of H 3392, an act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the commuter rail. In essence, it sets in place the first step on the path to implementing Transit Matters Regional Rail Initiative. With regional rail, riders will be assured that they can get a train at an easily ascertained time and know that their longest wait will be just a few minutes. Rides will be faster because electric trains accelerate faster and handle grades better. Passengers, including those with physical challenges, will board faster on high-level platforms where they can just step on board and not have to climb that mountain. Passengers will get to their destinations faster. But that's not all. The bill under consideration feeds this essential question: what do we want public transportation to look like in the next 5 years, 10 years, 25, 50 years? The decisions made here regarding this bill will give us a first glimpse of the answer. Is merely restoring the MBTA's transportation assets to a state of good repair really the answer? I don't think so. I see a future with a fully integrated regional rail system connected by a rail link between North Station and South Stations. I see a network extending from Cape Cod deep into Maine. I see true high-speed service from Boston to Providence and beyond, and from Boston to Springfield and beyond. As the Northeast Corridor has been extended into Virginia, I see it continuing northward to Portland and beyond, following the path of the Downeaster. I see a further extension of the NEC connecting Boston to Manchester and Concord, New Hampshire, and then on to Montreal. So, what's in it for me? It's this. I want to take the train from Lawrence to South Station and change for the Springfield high-speed line to see my daughter in nearby Chicopee. I want to take that high-speed train through Springfield and Hartford to Penn Station in New York to see my other daughter in Jersey. I want to take a somewhat slower but higher speed train from South Station to Chicago, where I'll change for the Empire Builder to see my other daughter in Seattle. I know, I'm getting out over my skis here with the vision thing, but you never get what you want until you ask for it. I'm not asking the Joint Committee to realize my dream, my moonshot, all at once. I'm asking you just to make a start by calling on the T to electrify and rationalize their schedules. I'm asking you to start putting in place a 21st century passenger rail system in eastern Massachusetts that I'll live to see. Please move H 3392 to the floor and push to make that investment in our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watts. Just a slight aside, for those of us who grew up there, we prefer New Jersey rather than just Jersey. That's okay.
My daughters were born in Jersey, and
New Jersey, okay. Anyway, any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your patience. As we, just prior to switching to, now we'll focus on those who have signed, remaining those who have signed online. I did want to recognize committee member Senator Timilty for some comments on some pieces today.
Thank you, Chair Strauss. Greatly appreciate this opportunity. First and foremost, I'd like to offer some comments regarding Senate Bill 2302. This is an act directing the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority to install sound barriers in both Quincy and Braintree on part of the Red Line corridor. This, of course, is something that I know my colleague and friend Senator Keenan has worked on in the past with a constituent by the name of Mr. Brian Sullivan, who I also have engaged with as well. This legislation specifically will require the MBTA to conduct a comprehensive sound study along the Red Line extension to Braintree between the Neponset River Bridge and the Braintree Red Line station. They will determine the ambient noise level using the background A-weighted sound pressure levels that is exceeded 90% of the time measured during an equipment operating hours. This must be conducted over a minimum of a 24-hour period. Moreover, the study will be conducted by an acoustical engineer, either employed by or on behalf of the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. In addition, in the residential areas where the decibel level is determined to exceed the ambient level by 10 or more decibels, the MBTA is required to install sound barriers in those areas to mitigate the noise pollution. With that, Mr. Chair, Chair Strauss, Chair Crichton, and members of the committee, my colleagues on this committee, I respectfully request a favorable report of Senate Bill 2302. Obviously, always happy to answer any and all questions and look forward to working, as always, with the members of this committee. And Mr. Chair, if you will indulge me further, I'd like to offer comments on Senate Bill 2304.
Only because you're a former House member.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Senate Bill 2304 is an act relative to protecting residents from hazardous traffic. This is relevant to, specifically, various endeavors around the Commonwealth that may be contemplating trying to put online trash transfer stations, specifically in Holbrook, which is part of the gentleman from Quincy's district, but it is nestled in between Randolph and Braintree and quite close in proximity to the towns of Stoughton and Avon as well. And I would dare say close to the town of Milton. There is a trash transfer station proposed. Just last week, DEP issued a permit. The name of the commercial entity is TLA Holbrook, excuse me. And under Senate Bill 2304, this bill will prohibit a solid waste disposal trash facility from being constructed in a municipality that does not have direct access to an expressway as designated by the Mass Department of Transportation. Moreover, this legislation is crucial to the region of the Commonwealth that I live in, and I would dare say very important to several regions across the Commonwealth. This transfer station has been met with staunch opposition from the residents of Avon, Braintree, Randolph, and Stoughton, as well as surrounding communities within Norfolk County. Furthermore, the town of Holbrook does not have direct access to an expressway. Specifically, this means the surrounding communities will experience a dramatic increase in truck traffic. It is estimated that the increase will be in the range of several hundred trucks per day. Moreover, this truck traffic increase will occur on smaller local roads, posing a significant disruption to the transportation patterns in the area. This will create hazardous conditions for both fellow drivers and pedestrians. By only allowing transfer stations to be constructed in municipalities that have direct access to a highway, we will be alleviating the immense burden on local roads and bridges and protecting the neighboring communities from potentially dangerous traffic patterns. With that, Chair Strauss and Chair Crichton, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 2304, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions from my colleagues. And finally, Mr. Chair, with your permission, Senate Bill 2305, an act relative to expanding the MBTA reduced fare program to include veterans. This is a refile. This is something, of course, Chair Strauss, you and I have had conversations before. And Chair Crichton, I thank you as well for your attention to this matter. As the former chair of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs, I have enjoyed the privilege of meeting and getting to know Massachusetts veterans who have selflessly served the United States. This is not a privilege that is unique to myself, of course. Every member of this committee has enjoyed this privilege. While the Commonwealth provides certain exemptions and waives certain fees under the Registry of Motor Vehicles for military service members, veterans, and their dependents, these do not extend to the use of public transit. To be succinct, Senate Bill 2305 will require the Department of Transportation, the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Veteran Services to conduct a study of the impacts, benefits, and costs of a veteran reduced fare program for the MBTA. Specifically, this study must evaluate the number of riders who would benefit from the program, the number of riders who qualify for alternate existing low-income fare programs, including the ride, the overall impact on fare revenue, and improved methods for advertising existing programs and the potential expansion under the study to veterans. In short, chairs, the veterans who reside in the Commonwealth are the best examples of our nation's bravest heroes and heroines. Simply put, we should extend reduced fare benefits for our veterans. Moreover, this bill will be the first step to ensure equity in reducing transit fares for veterans, similar to what we've already done in relation to RMV fees. Thank you for your consideration, Chair Crichton and Chair Strauss, and to each and every member of this committee. I respectfully request a favorable report for Senate Bill 2305. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Thank you, Senator. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chair.
We'll return to the public, members of the public who've signed on for remote testimony. I will come back at the end just in case we've missed anyone in the hearing room itself. Next to sign on remotely, Brooke Forgetta. Okay. Donald Jarvis. Nancy Gillies. Or Nance, I'm sorry. Thomas O'Brien. Jeff Clark. I should say, oh, good. There you are, Mr. Clark. Let me just, just a sec before you begin, so people understand, sometimes people do sign up remotely just believing that they're signing up to watch the hearing. And so out of an abundance of caution, we call their names in case they meant the signing in to be offering testimony. So, sir, thank you for your patience. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Strauss and Crichton and committee members. I feel like after you read all those names, I won the lottery. I'm a member of the Transportation Working Group for Elders Climate Action in Massachusetts. Also, we're members of the Zero Emissions Vehicle Coalition. Also a resident of the town of Amherst. So I'm a regular rider of the Pioneer Valley Transit Authority buses, and I was a regular rider on the commuter rail in my days commuting in the Boston area. And Elders Climate Action strongly urges the committee to favorably report out the bills electrifying the RTAs, which is 2285 and 3366, and the act relative to setting deadlines to electrify the MBTA commuter rail, S2217 and H3392. These are our highest priority bills for the transportation group or before this committee. four primary reasons. A lot has already been said on these issues by my colleagues in the ZEB Coalition. One is certainly meeting our climate goals. According to a Mass DOT study in 2017, if a single passenger switched from a gas-powered car to public transit, we'd avoid 1.2 metric tons of CO2 per year. Secondly, it's a primary source of air pollution. Transportation is responsible for estimated 2,800 deaths per year. Springfield, Fall River, Lawrence, Lowell, New Bedford, Worcester, Brockton, also by RTAs, experience some of its highest level of pollution from gas-powered vehicles. Boston area certainly does as well. And air pollution has been linked to higher risks in cardiovascular disease, cancer, and other lung and heart diseases in children, adults, and the elderly, like people from Elders Climate Action. Thirdly, advancing climate justice. Mass transit is a lifeline for many residents, especially low income, people of color, older adults, people with disabilities who cannot afford personal vehicles. So people dependent on mass transit often live in communities that experience high levels of pollution. And lastly, just to increase the use of mass transit, the ubiquity of cars, trucks has accelerated traffic congestion and urban sprawl, as well as limiting space needed for housing and recreation. And yet a private vehicle is no longer the fastest way to get from one place to another in most urban areas. So I personally have traveled extensively outside the US, and I have found that transit systems in every European or Asian city I visited so far surpasses what we offer citizens in the Commonwealth. So we really applaud the focus that these bills have on mass transit modernization, as well as improving its cleanliness and reliability. So thank you for your time and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, on both counts. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for your patience today. Next to sign up remotely, Lori Woods. Next, we have Brian Forg. Next, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there.
Hello, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Please proceed.
Sure. Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Brian Forg, and I'm a Select Board member for the town of Chester, a rural community located in the northeast corner of Hampden County. I'm asking for you all to favorably report H 3273, an act to invest in local roads, and bills H 3284 and Senate Bill 2270, the joint bills that Representative Socolo testified on recently. Acts will review the Chapter 90 funding program. These bills, if enacted, would make significant efforts to help close the disparities and difficulties with road funding for rural communities. The town of Chester works incredibly diligently, as all rural towns do, to ensure safe, traversable, and comfortable roads for our residents. However, more assistance is necessary. We have more than 57 road miles, many of those being dirt roads that frequently get washed out in rain and snowstorms, that need to be handled with tax payments from only 1,200 residents, and any creative funding opportunities our town government apply. With Representative Blai's bill, there is the creation of more grant opportunities to make necessary improvements that are distributed based on share of road miles, a measure that will ensure equitable distributions to rural communities like Chester. In a similar vein, the Socolo, Pignatelli, and Mark bill would create a commission to make recommendations to improve Chapter 90 funding allocation formula, hopefully resulting in a set of changes that will benefit and streamline the process for rural communities. The opportunity to simplify the reporting requirements of Chapter 90 money, as an example, and to provide more assistance to underserved communities should be seized. Keeping with the theme that this hearing has gone through, this is my first time testifying in front of your joint committee, and I appreciate the work that all of you do on these important issues. But towns like Chester need additional support from you all. We have very limited personnel. We have very committed personnel. Our highway department our highway superintendent, I would say, is the best in the Commonwealth. But when we have almost no one on our team that's able to churn out grant applications like bigger communities, when we're balancing a budget that is smaller than the student government budget at the college I attend, it's difficult to keep a set of services and an amount of infrastructure that is equitable and, quite honestly, comfortable for my constituents to travel on. I urge you all to favorably report these bills, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forg, and for your patience today. We appreciate your testimony. Is there any question from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again. Continuing on the list, Melissa Lauren. Next would be Alana Pope. Next would be Dan Pope. Next would be Karen Spangler. And as I indicated before, not everyone who signs up necessarily intended to testify. They just wanted to be recorded as participating in the hearing by remote viewing. Next, we have Katie Sinclair. Charles Spangler. Andrea Oftring. Jillian Pavides. And is there anyone remaining in the hearing room who signed up or didn't sign up who does wish to offer testimony? Sorry for not noticing or before. Anyone? In that case, that concludes those who've indicated desire to testify. I want to thank the committee members and staff and the members of the public who testified and observed. I would point out again that for the next 10 days, the record of the committees remains open for those who want to submit additional exhibits or testimony with regard to the bills we heard today. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We are completed. Everyone have a great holiday.